I've noticed a lot of posts talking about why people don't think fandoms are like fun anymore, and I agree with these statements as someone who's been on the internet, well, during the times where there were like crazy fandoms. I think while they were having their peak, I guess, Voltron, I think She-Ra for a little while, Undertale was not a part of Homestuck, but I've heard enough from friends about that fan base, and I guess I've just kind of been engrossed in fandom culture for a decent while, and yeah, I feel like newer forming fandoms are just kind of different. I really don't know how else to explain it. But I feel like there's kind of two polar opposites during fandom culture. One of those being like policing, going, oh no, our fandom is gonna become insert toxic fandom. I really hate insert toxic fandom, and I don't want this fandom to become toxic like that, so they tend to exclude people, and then they want their fandom to be exclusive, I guess. And then the other half is like, how do I explain it? They really just don't like fan content at all. So they're not really polar opposites. I think they are in the same vein. But there's different types of policing. One that's like getting upset at fans for enjoying the content, and then there's other people who are upset at people for like expressing their content, fan content, whatever. So I will be getting into that. So by the first one, I think this happened a lot with Welcome Home. Welcome Home, this happened too, where people really didn't want their fandom to become toxic. So they would kind of like police it a lot. And that isn't to say that there were not problematic people. There was way too many crazy stuff going on in the Welcome Home fandom, specifically regarding some creators of alternate universes, for Wally Darling specifically, and a lot of boundaries being broken, might I add. And I think I said this in the last video, but I hope to do a longer in-depth thing about that. And I think most recently with Yellow Cree, there was so many people going, oh, I hope our fandom stays small, I don't want it to become toxic. And because they kept trying to make it not toxic, they've kind of excluded a bunch of fans or new fans in the process, because there's also this mentality that if you're a new fan or you've recently found said media, then you are a trend hopper and a fake fan, which is kind of frustrating because it really discourages newer people from coming into said fandom, because I promise you, when that fandom is dead, you're gonna be screaming and crying for any content you can get. I've been there. And the second part of that is the people who get upset at generating fan content, or like headcanons, all that stuff. And that's something I could go on for forever, basically. But I think now that Gravity Falls has gotten Book of Bill, it's been like skyrocketing in popularity, right? And one of the like posts I remember seeing recently on the platform was someone getting mad at people for cosplaying characters, which is fascinating because a lot of fandoms are carried by fan content in general. And as someone who's like watched the resurgence of Gravity Falls recently, all this new fan content is great. So I'm kind of like riding on that high of, you know, all the fan art, fan animations. They're so good. Anyway, I think I kind of went on a tangent there, but there's just been a lot of general weirdness in that area. And I think one of the things that I hadn't seen originally when I was joining into a bunch of these fandoms was people policing headcanons. And I've noticed this with, like, especially Genshin Impact, anything from Hoyoverse, really, like Zenless Zone Zero, Honkai Star Rail, Honkai Impact 3rd, Genshin, all of those, they get really, really mad about headcanons. And it's really funny, because I feel like headcanons are one of the things that I've seen since forever, and I think it's a part of interacting with content you like, is sometimes you want to envision yourself in said fandom, so you'll kind of reflect yourself onto some of these characters. And I get that some people are upset that people headcanon to the point of mischaracterizing, but the thing is, a person, like, adding a bunch of headcanons to a character is not going to change the original character. The base character is still there, they're just adding a bunch of layers onto it. So you can still have your original character, and they can still have their flavorful character, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think it's just kind of strange to watch this happen. But I actually really don't think fandom has changed all that much. I guess in the core of it, while there are a bunch of these new things that growing fan bases have to deal with and fandoms have to deal with, but I think what I've seen from the Gravity Falls resurgence and a bunch of other fandoms growing in popularity again is there's just so much more fan content, or at least there's a growing amount of it. And it's really awesome to see people sort of share that love for this piece of media and then create crazy things with it. I think it's one of my favorite things about being in a fandom was when I was in Undertale, when I was like really deep in the Undertale fandom. I still am, but you know, when it was like reaching its peak in like 2016 to 2018, I want to say. One of my favorite things to do was like read a bunch of comics, watch comic dubs of the fan content people would create. So artwork, comics, cosplays, all of these things are what make a fan base a fan base. And it's really unfortunate that we do have to deal with bad actors in a fandom. But unfortunately for us, bad actors are always going to exist within the fan space. No matter how much you try to exclude people from it or call them trend hoppers or call them new fans, new gens, whatever, it's really not helping prevent those people from joining anyway. And in the end, you're just kind of becoming the toxic person that you were trying to get rid of in the first place. And I love seeing people insert their characters and their ideas and their headcanons onto characters. Like, one of the things that I've noticed a lot of people hate on is self-inserts and self-shipping also. And, you know, that's like the craziest part to me because, again, those characters have existed, those types of characters have existed since, I don't know, beginning of time, perchance. And it's completely fine with wanting to insert yourself into a media you enjoy. And yeah, sometimes I guess self-shipping can be like a little weird. But I think my general rule for, I guess, self-shipping is if you are the same age as the character, or it's not weird to be liking the character because they're like underage, then it's fine, because, you know, self-shipping is fun. I don't really do it because I don't have characters I guess I like that much to insert myself into with, but I can see the appeal, you know? And I think in general, like I've said before, big fandoms, growing fandoms, all that, they're always going to be, I guess, a little bit chaotic, and they're going to be filled with, again, some bad apples, but there's generally a lot of good that comes from a fan base. Sometimes. It depends, because if the base media is built on a bunch of hatred and flaws and whatnot, then I think the fan base comes from the same vein. And I don't want to mention any fandoms or media specifically that I think emulate this, but just know that sometimes there is, I guess, a fandom that comes from an inherently toxic thing. So, in a way, it kind of generates more inherently toxic people. But those fandoms can also create some really good redesigns, really good reworks. So, I guess in a way, it all kind of works out. But I think in general, it's just grown kind of strange to see people police fandoms and hate fandoms for being popular, or for people to find out about this media because of popularity, because, you know, how the way people find fan-based content, the way people find media or things that they like is different for everybody. You know, sometimes people were there since day one, and then there are some people who have just found out about it. And that's completely fine. They just get to experience it in a different vein than you, because they weren't really there for some of the key events. But please, stop excluding people from fan bases, because I promise you, when all of the fan content is gone, it's gonna be tumbleweeds and deserts, and trying to find any scraps that you can. And yeah, I guess that's my messy 2 cents on the topic. I do think that fan bases can still be really fun. I think being in fandoms is really fun, and no bad actors, I think, could ever change that for me, because there's just so many different types of content that you can jump into. So, yeah,